But we're going to go a little farther. Go ahead and take the crankshaft off. Put those two screws over here. Now you can see another bearing. Very seldom, especially if you're taking good care of it, is there going to be anything wrong with this bearing. If you let the reel get dumped in the lake, this bearing could be corroded. If you're turning it and it's turning smooth, there's probably no reason to take it any farther apart than that. You could add a drop of oil to that bearing, or you could just put a little bit more grease on it. It's fine. If you turn that and it's not turning, or you see any rust, yeah, then it's going to need done. And there's a little E-clip on there that you're going to need a very small screwdriver to get behind that clip. And this one is going to be stubborn. It's just a very small slot, you can get it there. And then you got your E-clip. And now that bearing, check it, because there may be a little thin shim there. Looks like it's under it. Keep track of which direction this went. And yeah, now we can see that little shim. There's a little brass shim right there. And the nylon gear. Make sure you keep track. Nylon gears pointing that way. And you could replace that bearing yourself if it was corroded. Maybe you just need to get it a little cleaner. No sense in taking that any further apart than that. And now we're going to take this worm gear out, same thing. It's got a little E-clip. And a little, actually got a couple of them, little bushings there. This one had 3. You just never know. Some are going to have 1, 2, 3, none. And here's your line guide worm gear. Little plastic bushing there that may come out. At that point, we've got everything that we need to clean. So we're going to clean a few of these parts up. As I said, I don't want any grease on this once I've done it. And I don't want the stock grease that's on these gears because we're going to go with synthetic. And we're going to flush the grease and oil out of these bearings so that we can replace them with synthetic. And there's several ways you can do that. A little glass jar, shot glass. Camp stove fuel is probably the best I've found for cleaning bearings.
What is that again?
Camp stove fuel.
Okay.
This, Coleman brand. This is Crown brand. You can use charcoal lighter fluid is another good one. Again, well ventilated area or outside. Now some people would just literally let this soak. And if you let it soak overnight, some of it will come out. You can shake it back and forth like that. However, if you've got an ultrasonic cleaner, even the small ones on eBay for like 20 bucks, it's for jewelry. Just put a little glass jar, a little bit of that solvent in there, set it inside the ultrasonic tank there, and run it for just a minute. Meanwhile, we'll clean the grease off of those parts.
So this is the standard for a flush. We send you a new reel.
This is everything I do on a flush. The only difference on one that's been used for a year or two is it's going to be a lot more cleaner. You know, there's going to be a lot of pond scum and things like that.
And
With this, I only have to clean the few parts that I'm going to change the lubricant on. I've got to get to those bearings, and I want to get the grease off of the gears. That's not a synthetic grease. It's factory grease is probably good for about a year. If you don't re-grease it within a year or have someone do it, then with average use, your gears are going to start wearing out. A good synthetic grease, you could probably go twice that long, maybe even 3 times that long, but I still suggest that if you're fishing regularly, every other weekend, you know, throughout the whole summer, learn to do this much yourself, or send them to me, send them back to the factory, and replace the grease once a year, and the reel will last a long time. This is just a regular cleaning solvent in here. I've got diluted simple green and water in a tank there that I rinse them off with. And then blow them dry again. You can use one of those cans of compressed air. You could use a hair dryer. There's several ways that you can, you know, dry the parts without running out and buying an air compressor if you don't have one. And now you can see in just 30 seconds, look how milky that is.
Yeah.
That's all of the grease that was in those bearings. So I'm going to dump that out. Fill it up one more time. In just a short time, that should probably be ready. Alright, here ready again. I can remember where all these parts go for the most part, but for anyone else, again, be sure taking pictures of several steps, taking one picture of all the parts laying here in the order you took them off, notes, whatever you need to be able to put that back together. Don't rely on a schematic because it's a one-dimensional view and it's not going to show you the direction certain parts. It may show you a picture of something that looks like this and that it went there somewhat, but it's not going to tell you which direction it faced. Whether this is the side or that's the side. So if you didn't take notes, if you didn't take pictures of it, you may have trouble putting it back together.
Yep. Sometimes the schematics aren't right. I was a maintenance manual writer for 14 years, and we make mistakes.
You can see it stayed clear.
Nice. Yep.
So that would have taken an overnight soak, possibly a couple. We just did it in a few seconds. And now just blow them out. One other way you can do this, I showed you earlier. And again, if you're going to use brake clean, make sure you're well ventilated area, wearing goggles, but you can literally just put that against the little gap there and blast it out, but you're going to have to do that safely. This is a lot easier. And the average fisherman that probably owns quite a few of these that wants to try and do them themselves, you can buy a little jewelry quality cleaner. They're like 20 bucks on eBay. It's going to be more than good enough for doing all of your bearings once a year. Alright, we've got our bearings out of the jar there. We've got them dry. We've got these parts all dry. I'll just lay these back to about where they were at. And these three little shims I know go with that worm gear, so let's put them right there. Now, I'm using TSI 301 synthetic lubricant for bearings. This is fairly expensive. You're going to be needing to do a bunch to have this. I think it's about $30 for that can, but it's the very best. It's also great for guns, so if you're into guns, this is the perfect gun cleaner and gun lubricant. It won't fingerprint, it won't attract dust. It forms a very thin layer, but all you have to do once these bearings are clean and dry is dip them in there and let them sit here for a second. That lube is inside the bearing, it's all over it. And there's a little bit of a solvent in there that's going to evaporate and leave just the oil. This is the concentrated oil, which is what I have in here. This is what I use on the worm gears or most other places. It's the 321, the concentrated, the 301 is what I use in the bearings. You can just use the 301, just the 321, the concentrated if you don't have this. It's not going to spin quite as free. You would just put one, maybe 2 drops on a bearing that size and roll it to get it distributed. Put a little on your fingers and rub it over it. Well, let's put this reel back together and we'll start worm gear here. And I'm going to put a little bit of the 321 oil on there. See there, our little bushing shims. There was 3 of them, and the seed clip. Which these can be really difficult. Get it right there.
Those E-clips, I never liked them putting them on Zebco reels, the 202s, when you had to take them off to spool them.
Little needle nose pliers with good pointed tips will pop it right in place. Make sure your shims didn't slide to the side, and there, it should be turning nice and free. Now I'm going to put a little oil on that pole. Make sure it's moving. I'm going to put a little bit more right there. Cap back on. And just snug. Don't over tighten that. This was the crankshaft bearing. It was greased. There's no way water can get into there. So if you want the reel to feel really smooth, you could just oil it. And that's what I mostly do, unless there's an opening on some of the older reels. Then I would definitely grease that. But I've used the 301 and the 321, both on that one, so it's very well oiled. Now, this was facing that way. And let's see here. The bearing actually goes on the shaft, but that's where it goes. And then it had a little E-clip. Slide that in like that. And drop it in place. This part of it holds down that clutch. Well, a little fresh grease there. A little fresh grease over all that. With the 2 screws. A little grease on the end of your screwdriver sometimes helps hold the screw. Make sure those are completely snug. And then it's turning free. Yep. And we're just doing pretty much the exact opposite of the way we took it together. Took it apart, just going back together. The nose kind of on those 2 tiny little screws. Right up in there. These just snug. Very easy to break plastic nose cones if you try and make that too tight. Make sure that it's facing to where it's going to catch that kick lever. Now your pinion yoke, have just a little grease right in there. Go ahead and put the pinion gear in there, and then just a little bit of grease on the actual gear, but don't let any get inside it, because that's where the spool shaft goes. You don't want any grease inside that pinion gear. Slide that in place. The small carbon fiber washer and the drive gear. Grease the teeth a bit. This is where it's handy to have some grease and a little medicine syringe. Force it down in those teeth. You can use a little brush, just make sure that you didn't get any grit or dirt in the oil that the grease that you're putting in there. First drag washer, plate with just a square hole, and the drag washer, then the one with the keys, slightly bigger one here, and then your top faces up like that. Then the sleeve for the clutch, but first we're going to re-verify which way that's turning. It's this way, so this is going to be up. I like to put just a drop of oil on that, so it's got some synthetic oil on it. And I like to wipe on the new ones, just wipe that stock grease out of there and put just a in here is a waterproofing seal for that. And now this was the direction up, so I'm going to turn it and go in there. And now you can see the grease came out in there, so it's basically just got a nice little waterproofing seal in there now. We've got our 2 little yoke springs that go on those posts. And we just go down like this. Try and do it in one fluid motion, because if you lift up, something may pop
back
apart. Now, if you remember, the side cover screws, one was a little longer of the 3 that are the same size. It went in this back upper corner. And then the 2 shorter ones, there was one there and one up front here. I'm going to use this Phillips to get them close and then finish it off with the standard to get it a little tighter without rounding them off. Now we've got that top crank bearing goes in there, and then you'll remember just the drag springs first. Now I want just a fingerprint basically of grease on that. And you can see how this one is cupped up. That's this direction it's going to go down. See, basically it's free to rock right that. And then the other one, again, just a little grease. And this cup is going to face down. And so now you can see a little daylight through the middle of them. Then the clicker, again, I like to swipe a little grease on that. That faces up. Go ahead and get the tension cap back on. That disc that was in there, it's easiest if you put it right there when you go together. I'm going to rub a little of this tungsten powder on there. Don't worry if you don't have that, it just kind of reduces friction. You can put just a little oil on it. Now I'm going to put a little grease inside that drag star area. Sounds like the mailman's here and the dog doesn't like that. But... Okay, now we can turn it up, nothing's going to fall down. We can put that last screw in there. The one that was behind the spool. Now over. This wasn't dirty, so we didn't do anything with it. If it was dirty, you probably could have wiped most of it off. There's almost never a reason to take this any farther apart. It's very complicated to get it back together. I don't recommend anyone take that apart on their own. Now, I'm actually going to polish this ring a little bit, even though it's brown in. And I'm going to start with some 3000 polishing paper. Got a little slit in the end of this here. This is brand new. Where is it? Little trick here. Use these little the sandpaper like a flag. Now I've got some tungsten disulfide on the end of that little Q-tip, and we're just going to drop that on there. That's going to reduce friction of the brakes and keep them from squealing. Still going to put a little bit of oil on there. You can put a little oil on the end of the Q-tip and wipe it around there.
So just to let you guys know, what Kevin was telling me before is when that centrifugal brake, when that dries out, that's when you start hearing that screeching in your reel. So it does actually need a little bit of lube. That metal dries out after a while.
Yeah, usually if you ever have one just start screeching like nails on a blackboard or a fork on a plate, it usually means that the centrifugal brake tabs that are some sort of a plastic, mylar or whatever, is rubbing against a dry brake ring. So put any good real oil, a little bit on that ring, and it'll be fine.
It's like running your windshield wipers on a dry windshield.
Exactly, same thing. Put that tension disc back in there, a little oil there. This bearing that's already oiled with that, back down in there. The little clip, again, very easy to lose at this point, so if you don't have extras, be very careful. Do it holding it in the bag. Put one side under, trap it with your fingernail, and work your way around until it's totally back in there. I like to put a little grease on the locking tabs. It's going to make it easier to get it open next year. A little bit in there. Got to put that bearing back on the spool that you may or may not have taken off. And the pin has a little taper to it. One side, that hole is slightly bigger. And if it goes in there, you're in the right side. And the tool that I use to pull that out is going to set that back in there. If you're interested, you can buy this little Hedgehog Studio bearing pin puller. You can find them on eBay, Japan Tackle. They're about $20, $30 depending on the brand. Some of them are actually only around 14, a little bit smaller. Just get it until that pin is centered again. This one is Bass Zone, same thing, a little smaller. I think it's only like $16. You can find them on eBay. I'm going to set this to 6 because Mark is going to get used to setting his reels a little differently than he used to, and he's going to use the brakes that are in the reel.
Yep. I'll hook it up and put the 10-pound test and that 3/8 ounce cast thing on there, and we'll see if I can beat the 178 feet that I cast doing it the other way.
Well, and one thing I didn't show you that before we took this apart, if we had done, before we flushed this out, just done a free spool test by spinning it with our fingers. Now, you've got to have all the brakes turned off to do it.
Right.
But the other ones that I did, we're spinning just with flicking the spool. We're spinning 3 to 4 seconds with the stock factory lube. And once we had done it, they were spinning a lot freer. But this one's got all 6 brakes turned on right now. But, you know, so it's not going to do that unless we turn all the brakes back off. See how much freer that's spinning?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, that's from removing that grease and stock lube from those bearings.
And also
getting a
not
good
hearing
synthetic.
I'm not hearing the grinding noises.
No,
that was there.
These bearings are now completely clean and have a very thin synthetic lube in them. And on a brand new reel, if you just want me to do that, that service is $19.95. If you're local, you can drop them off. If you're not, you can ship them to me, priority mail, $6, $7 both ways. It's still going to be worth it. And let's put this nut cover back on there now. This screw can be a real bear sometimes to get started. Let's put a little grease on there. Everything's working correctly and it's nice and smooth, and your hands probably have some grease on it. Now, the bearings in this knob, they're brand new, they're in good shape, no sense taking them apart. It's very easy to damage these, so if they're spinning good, once every few months, once a year, put a little drop of oil right in there, let it go down in there, and just wipe it off. And I wouldn't take these apart unless you need to. If they feel gritty, but if you use a screwdriver in there, it's going to damage the finish on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very soft. Depending on which ones, sometimes a dime can turn it, but sometimes you're literally going to have to buy new caps. It's just, if you take it apart, you may have to buy new knobs and new caps, but there it is, all flushed out, all stock lube removed, synthetic replaced, and now let's turn those brakes back up so we don't get a massive backlash. And it's ready to go. And there you go.
All right, Kevin. Thank you, sir. Kevin Rush, Pro Reel Service.
www.proreelservice.com.
And like I said, I'll put a link to his website in the description. And you saw how much work he just did for $20.
Yeah, that's just the flushing tin there. Well worth it.